Hello and welcome. This is Sylvia Mamdouh. AUC TV managed to get 3 exclusives yesterday from President Liza Anderson, Brian MacDougall, and the Vice President Dr. Khaled Dahawy. AUC President Liza Anderson confirmed to AUC that she knows that there are some faculty and staff that are not happy with the administration policies. She also said that yesterday's referendum is a form of freedom of expression.
We're right here now with President Liza Anderson. President Liza, in the beginning of all the hassle that was going on, why didn't you invite some professors or accounting professors or someone from the firm, the auditing firm, to explain the budget or the entire balance sheet for the students?
We did actually reach out to a number of people. The auditors, for obvious reasons, upon reflection, decided that they didn't want to get involved in this. They are external auditors, they are, have formal liabilities and responsibilities and so forth. We've reached out to some of our accounting faculty and some of our business faculty, and they are prepared to discuss this. But at the outset, it wasn't necessarily clear that this was going to be so complicated that the faculty couldn't do this informally. At this point, we now have a group of faculty, but honestly, I think most of the students now understand what the issues between the differences between a tax filing and a budget and so forth.
I believe that the students don't really understand this is why they're doing all of this mess. Why didn't the administration take faster actions upon what's going on? Why would they have to wait till Monday the 30th to take such action to do the entire presentation for the budget?
Well, we planned a long time ago. Typically what we do, in March we have the Board of Trustees meeting, they approve the budget for the following year, and then we come back to the campus. These meetings are in New York. We come back to the campus, we talk to the senior administrators about what happened, we go to the University Senate, and then we have an open forum. So we had done that. The whole thing was planned. And I was away some of last week. I was out of the country some of last week, and so the question of whether the students had not consulted with us about what they were planning to do and so forth and so on. So we thought about whether it made sense to change the whole schedule of what we ordinarily do, and at the time, partly because of travel schedules of mine and the provost and so forth, we thought this is a reasonable way to operate. It's the way we usually operate. And moreover, our doors are always open. People who have questions can always come and talk to us and so forth. So the momentum, the students sort of got themselves, if you will, wound up about this and got themselves asking questions and not looking for answers much more quickly and in a much more sort of hasty way than I think it merits. These are reasonable questions to ask. They can be asked in reasonable ways. The budget office is willing to talk about it. The EVP Brian is willing to talk about it, and so forth and so on. So it didn't have to become something that was, a set of accusations and so forth and so on. That happened very quickly. Mm-hmm. From our point of view, it was unnecessary. It didn't, we had an open door policy. It would have been very easy for people to ask questions if they had wanted to, and obviously we had a schedule for how we were planning to discuss the budget.
I'll move on to the referendum that is going on right now. Mm-hmm. If it was only a form of expression of freedom of expression, why wasn't the students informed earlier? They just got the email right now informing that it's actually an invalid referendum. Why weren't the students informed earlier?
I guess I don't quite understand that question, because anybody can organize anything they want and call it a referendum. There's no indication here of who the eligible voters are. There's no effort to try and have a discussion about what the referendum is about that is open to the whole community, so forth and so on. So you can organize something that looks, it's the same kind of thing of likes on Facebook. Likes on Facebook are not a formal referendum. They don't give you a sense of whether there are lots of people who don't like and didn't vote. So things like turnout, things like sampling error, all those kinds of things. So if you're going to have an election, or you're going to have a survey, or you're going to have a poll, there's a whole methodology to that. This is None of those things. It's not an election with a methodology. It's not a survey with a methodology. So it is an expression of opinion, which is perfectly reasonable. And there's no reason why anybody should be prevented from expressing their opinion. But that it should be taken as any kind of representative opinion, that's the problem. And there hasn't been any indication that this is a representative opinion, because they're not following conventional survey methodologies or electoral methodologies.
If the turnout of the referendum itself turns out that they call for the leave of the administration, would you take that in consideration, in any kind of consideration?
I'm not sure what kind of consideration you think I should. I mean, I know that there are students and faculty and staff who are unhappy about university policies. We knew that before. I think this will confirm that. I don't think that that will confirm very much more than that, because, as I say, the question of what the underlying issues that they're unhappy about are not being debated in the referendum itself. I think there's always a problem when you say, I don't like the policies and therefore I'm going to do something about the person. I don't, from my point of view, I can see debates about policies. I can see debates about lots of policies at the university. And in fact, I think there are reasonable positions on a lot of different areas of policy debate. So I wouldn't even say my positions are always the best positions. I like to debate things. We're just having a debate in the cabinet about a particular issue. That's a good way to make decisions. But it is not necessarily to say, I don't like the policies, therefore I want to get rid of the person. So I'm not sure how to interpret this. I don't know what the underlying policy concerns are, and they're not being surfaced in the referendum.
I'll move on to the budget really quickly. The percentage of the endowment, could it be raised? Could it be discussed? Could it be raised with the Board of Trustees?
This has been a discussion with the Board of Trustees certainly ever since I've been at AUC. Different universities in the United States have pretty much the same spending rule we have. So when you get a particular return on the endowment, you're permitted to spend a little bit of that, and the rest of it goes back into the endowment, and this is conventional. All universities in the United States that are fortunate enough to have an endowment operate that way. The question of whether the spending rate is generous enough or careful enough is always something that trustees will go back and forth and discuss and so forth. So this has been discussed over the last 6.5 years. And I think it will probably be discussed forever, because the question of whether you really should be saving for the future more or whether you should be spending now more is a philosophical question. So yes, I think it certainly is not unreasonable for people to say that is a policy debate. And I would be perfectly happy if we had a policy debate about that as one of the many policy debates. That is something that sometimes universities will adjust their spending rate because they think that there are problems in the market, the return on the endowment isn't as good as it should be, and so forth. And so there are lots of different factors that go into that, but it's a reasonable debate.
In the paper that the student union came out with, they say in 2012 the university covered its deficit, and in 2012 and 2013 the university have made profit of $14 billion. Is that true?
No.
The administration decided to cut off 20% of staff, workers, and faculty. Why weren't there any kind of alternatives? For example, do professors in summer courses, they get triple salaries? Why don't they?
Okay, there's a few things that aren't completely accurate in what you just said, but I'll correct that a little bit and then discuss what we are trying to do. There is no intention to cut faculty, so the faculty size will stay what it has been. We want to have a student-faculty ratio that is consistent, and so there's nothing happening to faculty at all. We're also on the workers level, the lower level workers, they are protected from any efforts to cut staff. And there are a lot of reasons for that. We think that that level of worker is more vulnerable to losing his usually his job, his or her job, and so we've protected the lower levels. So the area in which we're really trying to do some staff planning is management level staff, so supervisor level, director level in units, so forth and so on. That level of staff, I think there are very few people at the university who don't think we are overstaffed. We have 5 times as many administrative staff as the American University in Beirut. Almost 5 times as many as the American University in Sharjah. I mean, in other words, it's not even a question of 20%. We are very, very much more staffed on the administrative side than we probably need to be. But we want to be judicious about that. We're not going to do suddenly, all right, we don't need whole units, or we have to think systematically about whether we need as many of this category of administrator as we have. Over the course of 5 years, or 3 years, and then probably 3 years, we ought to be able to say, we don't need these many managers. We don't need these many administrators. But if you do it slowly and you do it over multiple years, you can do it in a way that doesn't damage the university, doesn't damage the daily operations of the university, and also gives people an opportunity to plan ahead and say, you know what, I don't need to be working at AUC. There are other places I could go, other things I could do, so forth and so on. So the idea is, we know we're overstaffed. We have a larger bureaucracy than we need. How do we address that? So we're trying to address that in the way that is least damaging to the university and fairest to the people in question.
Thank you very much, President Lisa.
Thank you.
Now we go to our second exclusive with the AUC Vice President, Brian MacDougall, explaining more about the deficit.
Right now, with Vice President Brian MacDougall. Mr. Brian, I wanted to ask you about what's going on right now in the university, and starting off, why didn't the administration invite some professors or auditory firm members to explain to the students the budget balance sheet?
Well, that's a really good question. We have a budget committee which has student representation, which also includes faculty from the School of Business. And so the question around the balance sheet and the income statement gets reviewed at the time of budget committee meetings. The students never asked me in advance of the special meeting last Thursday to explain differences from various reports. I would have gladly arranged for someone to explain the difference. In fact, I would have explained the difference myself had I been asked.
Right now, the measurements have been raised with the student union. Why didn't the administration take faster actions?
Well, again, the university administration, the university cabinet, various vice presidents have regular communications with student leaders. The SU president and the vice president meet with the university cabinet on a monthly basis. We have student representation on a host of committees. And frankly, we were surprised by what happened last Thursday because, again, as I've said many times, none of the student leaders came to me and asked for an explanation as to why the numbers on the 990 form were different than the deficit that we have shared with the university community many times.
All right. Regarding the referendum, I understand an email has been sent and it's only a form of expression, of freedom of expression, and it's not valid. If the referendum result turns out that they want the administration to leave, what can you comment about that?
Well, I guess I'd begin with the acknowledgement that the university is proud of its freedom of expression policy. From the perspective of this referendum, one is left with the question as to why, because certainly the students should understand that the Board of Trustees hires the president of the university. The students do not hire the president of the university. The individuals who are recruited to act as senior administrators of the university are hired through an appropriate selection and search process, and all members of the university cabinet report to the president. We expect, as senior administrators, to have an opportunity to speak and also to listen to all members of the university community. And I, for one, have always had an open door with respect to any questions that have come from any student with respect to the operation of the university.
Right. The administration decided to cut off about 20% of its workers and staff. Why weren't any other alternatives taken rather than dismissing those workers and staff?
Well, actually, that needs clarification. In the spring of 2014, the university community should remember that we were dealing with a very large deficit. One of the measures in dealing with the deficit was a commitment that we would look at all of our services, how they were deployed, how could we use technology, what processes could we change, and we committed to a multi-year staff planning program that has as an underpinning, and this needs to be highlighted, that it would protect the most junior workers of the university. So the staff planning program is not looking to reduce the number of staff in levels 1 to 4. Quite the contrary. The focus has been on management staff, supervisory staff, and not the workers. And there's clearly a misunderstanding with respect to how the 20% number is being referenced, because if you look at the size of the workforce, approximately 1,100 of the 2,500 staff who work at the university are in levels 1 to 4, and they're being protected.
What about the others, the managerial?
Well, the approach that we're taking is to carefully look at vacancies and to carefully decide whether or not we actually need to replace positions that become vacant as a result of retirement or resignation. So there have been very few people who have actually been asked to leave the university involuntarily.
Is there any alternatives or protection for those who have been asked to leave?
Well, in terms of those who have been asked to leave, and again, I need to emphasize it's been a very small number, we have respected Egyptian labor law, and individuals have been supported and have been provided with appropriate compensation.
In the student union paperwork that they have come up with, they said in 2012 the deficit has been covered, but in 2013 and 2012 again, the university have made profits of $14 million.
That's a classic misunderstanding when someone looks at financial reports and isn't appreciative of the purpose of the various financial reports. The confusion relates to the 990 form, which shows clearly that the investments of the university or the endowment gained more revenue than the university actually took on to its operating statement. The reason why the difference is because the Board of Trustees has an investment spending policy that only allows the university to extract 5% of the investment income. And so in the year FY12, the gains on the investment were much greater than 5%, which technically is a good thing as it relates to the long-term health of the institution. The 5% spending rule is a very common spending rule as it relates to endowments at American universities.
Could this endowment percentage be raised?
Oh, certainly. The Board of Trustees could make a determination to increase the spend rate. Having said that, you should know that generally the spend rate from endowments in American universities ranges from 3 to 5%. So the 5% spend rate is a pretty reasonable rate when one compares our spend rate to other universities.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope that helped a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Khaled Dahawy, the Vice President for the Student Affairs, confirmed that no one from the student union came to him or asked about the balance sheet or the deficit.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of misconception about the budget and how it's being introduced. People do not understand the budget and the tax return and the difference between them. The budget of AUC is what's called an operating budget, which is a budget that works or represents the operations of the company, the university. Meaning you look at how much revenue does the university make and how much expenses do we have to spend in the operations of the university. On the other side, the tax return is a document that has to be supplied to the tax authority in the US, which is called the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and it provides returns of AUC, whether they can be used for operations or they cannot be used in operations. In that sense, AUC has what's called an endowment, which is the lifelong commitment of AUC. It is like the capital of AUC that keeps AUC stable for the many, many years to come. What happens is this endowment is being invested. It's a lot of money, and the investment has a return. This return comes back to AUC. Well, in AUC, we can only use 5% of this return in the operating budget. So in the operating budget, you only see 5% of the return of the endowment, which is a very small figure, representing the 100% that shows in the tax return. And this is why the students are being, or they do not understand that there is a part that shows in the tax return, which is all the return, while what shows in the operating budget is only the amount that needs to be used.
So if there's a problem or we want more money, why can't we use more than 5%?
The problem is that the university has a rule, and the rule says that we want to stabilize the university for many years to come. The university cannot just spend all its money today and not have money for the future. And therefore, like many universities in the world, the endowment has an amount which is a percentage that we can withdraw from, and this amount is judged by calculations that's done. Could we recalculate? Yes, we can, but there is a way to discuss these things instead of coming out and saying people are lying or they are not showing the truth. And this is unfortunately what the students have done. Instead of coming with the financial numbers to the administration and asking them for an explanation, instead what they did is they came out and said, they are liars, they don't show us, instead of trying to communicate with administration first.
So now there's a referendum that's it's calling for the administration to leave. So what's your comment about this?
Unfortunately, we at AUC believe in freedom of expression. Everybody has the right to say what they want. I don't think that this referendum has any formal power because they don't have the right, the students or anybody does not have the right to put the cabinet or take the cabinet or the board of trustees. There are formal ways to do that. And definitely there's nothing called the referendum because we don't even have elections for the cabinet. When we had the referendum, you have to have elections or someone that you have the power to elect or not elect. In AUC, the cabinet and the board of trustees are not elected, but they have other forms of representation. So I think it's a nice way to show the world that AUC has freedom of expression. We allow people to talk. What people don't know, and I think is very important, the student union president and vice presidents are invited every month to come to the cabinet meetings and discuss anything and everything they want. But there's a very big difference that needs to be understood between discussing things and making decisions. Students, other stakeholders are more than welcome in AUC to come and voice their concerns and say what they want, but the decision has to be made at the end by the cabinet. And this is the form of education that I think is very important for all the students and everybody at AUC to understand. We all work together. We are all stakeholders, and I like the statement of us being stakeholders. And I say this to everybody on campus. I tell them I am a student of AUC, I'm a graduate of AUC, I am a professor at AUC, a faculty member, I was a chair of a department, I was a director of a program, the MBA, I am a vice president, I'm a father of students, so I carry so many different hats. And I think what's important is what is important for AUC. It's not what's important for the students alone, it's not what's important for the faculty, it is not what's important for the staff, it is what's important for AUC as an institution that has been in Egypt now for 97 years, and we hope for 100 or 200 years. We don't want to destroy this institution, and what we're doing now is we're destroying this institution.
So the results of the referendum will be not credible for the administration itself.
I don't think it's credible. There's nothing formal about it. It's just an activity that the students want to do, and we welcome that, and we have opened for them the room to do that. Nobody has stopped them. As nobody has stopped the students from saying their opinion before, nobody will stop them. AUC sticks to the concept of freedom of expression. It's not just a concept that we say, we allow. The president has allowed the students to actually come out and talk against it. The cabinet has allowed these students to do that. I think you all know what happens in other universities to students who talk their voice. Instead, we protect our students because we want the students at AUC to be different. We are the students who have the right and the courage to say what we believe. But the difference is, do we say it in a respectable way or do we destroy our institution? And what I hope the students and everybody in AUC understand, we should work together to build this institution instead of breaking the institution, destroying it by fighting between ourselves.
Moving on to the faculty and the security members, they say they have many problems. So what can be done in this issue?
Every institution in Egypt has a problem. I don't know if you have realized in the last 5 or 6 years in Egypt, we have not had a normal year. We have always had influenzas of certain animal types. We have had the revolutions. We have closure of our gates because of freedom of expression in AUC. We've had revolutions again. So we have so many problems in Egypt. We are at a very turmoil point in the Egyptian history. So we have to understand that we have problems. The issue is, does one side bear all the problems or should we work together? And AUC administration, AUC faculty, AUC students, AUC board of trustees, we all need to work together to find solutions to these problems. There are task forces, there are committees, we need to talk about it. No one side, whatever, it cannot be driven by one side. Again, the stakeholders' idea is a very good idea, but let's talk together. But the stakeholders' idea does not say that the decision has to be taken by everybody, but everybody is part of the decision-making process, and then the cabinet makes the decision that once they get feedback from everybody.
So going back, as you said, the part about the budget deficit and it's the tax return part, what the administration will do to make the students and the campus itself understand this, because they don't understand. They see that the university is dying and there is no transparency.
Unfortunately, I have to say the students have been more efficient than we have until today. I agree with you. We have communicated through AUC News. There has been flyers that are out, and I think using your communication, the president have just made an interview for the caravan. There's a lot of ways we're trying to get to people. We have open doors. All the doors, the president, you have come to my office without appointment. You were entered right away. Everybody of the administration is willing to talk to people, but the problem is I don't think the other side wants to listen. The problem is, if there was good intentions, I think the students should have come and said to the administration ahead of time, we have tax returns and we have budget, why are they different? And then they have the right to do whatever if they were not convinced. But instead, the students came out and said, nobody has ever come to me. I'm a professor of accounting, so I know very well. I would have expected the students to come to me and explain, we have the numbers, what is wrong, why are these numbers different? I would have explained it. Instead of coming out and running around saying that people are thieves and they're trying to steal from the university. It is about time you understand that this is our university. Ours here means all the stakeholders. Nobody wants this university. I'm a vice president in this university. Do you think I want the university to fail, or am I working very hard to make this university sustainable? Every student, but everybody has a different opinion. We can't have one side push their opinion on the rest. We have to have communication, repeated communication. We have to be patient. We have to spend time talking to each other. And this is unfortunately what the students have not done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khaled.
Thank you.